From last week's romp in the Eifel Mountains, we travel almost halfway around the world to Japan for our second race. While it might not be the ring, Suzuka has become one of the most iconic tracks in the world, making many a best of list. So let's see who gets bragging rights today as we get ready to watch round 2 of the Lotus 79 Sunday Grand Prix Series. And you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. I am Joe Peak, and joining me in the booth is Roush Racing driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director, Bobbert O'Brien, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. If Suzuka is an unwrapped gift under your Christmas tree, why don't we pull off the bow and wrapping paper to show you a little bit about it with our track guide. Welcome to Suzuka Circuit, perhaps most famous for its hosting of the Formula One Japanese Grand Prix for much of the event's history. This track sees all sorts of racing besides that. In fact, this place began as a test track for Honda, but later proved to be a driver and fan favorite for competitive motorsports as well. The full layout of the Grand Prix course steals the show, but there's actually 5 different versions that can be run on iRacing. With their lap lengths ranging from just over 2 kilometers to nearly 6 kilometers, plenty of different types of cars can suit the track. GT racing and lower-level open-wheelers are quite popular, but motorcycles are also a staple here. Some of the corners have become world-renowned over the years. The S's are often cited as one of the great tests of a driver's technical prowess. Then, of course, there's Degner's 1 and 2, which provide very little runoff considering their fast and narrow entry. Later on, the long backstretch leads up to the notorious 130R, which is blindingly fast. The Casio Triangle offers one last chance at an overtake if you're brave, but has been the scene of many drivers clattering into one another over the years. F1 fans will be quick to cite the infamous coming together here between Senna and Prost. However, real-life visitors will find it's more than the racing that provides some viewing pleasures. The unique ways in which the Japanese fans celebrate their favorite cars and drivers certainly capture your attention. But it's no wonder they're such fanatics, because who wouldn't be with one of the world's greatest tracks right in your backyard? Well, known perhaps most for F1 being here and the fact that it is a figure 8, this place has become iconic.
It is one of the drivers' favorite racetracks when you talk about all of the racetracks on this planet Earth. 17 turns, 3.6 miles, and it is a narrow racetrack. So with these Lotus 79s, you got to make sure to keep it on the track first of all, but really the first sector through the snake, you got to be on top of it. Really single file. Your first passing opportunity comes down at the hairpin down there, also known as turn 11. But be careful. It is easy to get in way too deep up there. And if you are following a train of cars, you got to be careful not to go plowing into somebody in front of you. After the hairpin, though, this track really opens up one of the most technical turns in all of motorsports. Spoon curve, slightly downhill, slightly off camber. It also tightens at the end. You really got to be able to attack that turn every single lap. And then 130R, a hugely fast corner in these cars. It will be flat out, which leads you to another great passing opportunity, also known as turn 15 and 16, the Casio Triangle. Hard on the brakes, but then be careful not to jump on the throttle too soon. You don't have any downforce in these cars at slow speed, but you got to be able to put that power down to launch yourself out onto the front straightaway.
They'll be trying their best around this place on Saturday, as you may have noticed, instead of the usual Sunday. But the championship has already had its one round with Topi Kortiniemi taking the win last week. I don't believe he is here. No, he's not here this week. In fact, he took 2 out of the 3 races in the Triple Crown last time out, but couldn't manage to seal the deal in the IMSA Vintage Series, unfortunately. Jacob Reed followed him home last time with Kimo Viekainen on the podium, and Zamaloa, who had a bit of a rough race earlier this morning over at Charlotte Motor Speedway in the Lotus 49s, is going to see what he can do here today in the Lotus 79s. We also have a F2 championship. It's the same cars, but lower I rating drivers.
We actually have a few new names up at the top here. Quentin Rottoni here leads that championship over Esteban Cavite, just 3 points. But remember, we've only had 1 race so far. Another new name down here, Emilio Fernandez Garrido. Cam Porter, a familiar one there in 4th. Chris Roberts in 5th place. And then you see the rest of the names here, 6th through 10th place. But once again, only 1 round done. Lots of racing to go this season.
Absolutely, and it's going to be 19 laps of racing at this track, round 2 out of 12. It's an open setup this series, so expect drivers to be trying to figure out how to get the downforce into this machine, but also be fast on some of the longer straights that you have at this track. No spare car if you wind up bending it. It's kind of old school around here with some places where the barriers are kind of close, and they have a drive-through penalty at 17 incidents, a DQ at 25. Keep it within the track boundaries, or else you're going to be taking some pain from iRacing's automated stewards. Right now, we're waiting for the first times to get onto the board out on track for qualifying. Could wind up being important here today, and something we haven't seen in a while here in the Lotus 79, Joey. It's a single split.
Now we got 28, almost 30 cars out here, so that means the low strength of field plus the high strength of field, they are all going to be mashed up here. And typically, we do have to deal with lap traffic, but Joe, with Suzuka being so long, you see almost 2 minutes per lap around here. I wonder how much of it we're actually going to see today.
Yeah, some of it may depend on how clean the race is. If drivers wind up in trouble towards the back and get caught up that little bit quicker. Zamaloa with provisional pole right now over Kimo Viekainen, but Juho Raina is now up at the top as he goes almost 4/10 quicker than the number 2 machine. We are still waiting for a lap time from Jacob Reed and a couple others, though.
Interesting as we ride on board here with Oya Zamaloa, go through Degner 1 and 2. Man, every single corner on this racetrack, Joe, there's just something to it. Whether it's the Degner bends, whether it's the hairpin, whether it's spoon curve, you have to approach each one of these corners exactly right because it is so technical. If you don't, you will lose time.
And that variety mostly comes from the fact this was built as a test track and is still used as such sometimes by Honda. So they have a wide variety of curves to really put the cars through the ringer and test them, but it means that the drivers, of course, get tested because of that. And Zamaloa brings it out of spoon curve, as we mentioned, needs 4/10 of a second to make up for the pole if he wants to take the top spot. We're still missing half the field. There must have been a lot of drivers that had an off track somewhere on that first lap.
And when we talk about Suzuka, the racetrack, I think that's easy to do, to really drop a tire off the track, pick up one of those 1x incident points, and in qualifying, that eliminates your lap time. I mentioned how narrow this racetrack is. Well, these cars are actually pretty wide, too.
Zamaloa goes quicker, but he gets bumped down because Jacob Reed on his first lap that counts goes up to pole ahead of Juho Rainer. Remember, Jacob was second last time out, could not catch up, even though he had a brief whiff of it to the leader, Topi Kortsanemi, when he had an incident on the final lap, but Jacob wound up about 3 seconds behind at the line. Juho Rainer takes it right back, though, on his next lap around. He hits a 47 flat and is back on top.
As we watch Barry West come around, a 149.108, that'll jump him up into the 7th spot, right behind Thomas Silbernagel, as we watch the rest of these cars really stream through their second lap here. Got about a minute and a half left in qualifying before that checkered flag falls, and when it does fall, qualifying will be over.
Bern DuPont passes the stripe and is 19th quickest on that time through. This is Robert Simpkins. Timothy Vandenberg is going to be our next one to be able to complete the lap time, with Uwe Zeilbauer going to be following him across. So there's definitely a few drivers that are able to complete at least one lap, but from here on out, you're not going to be able to get around in time for the next one through. I'm following Timothy on my screen as we watch on board with Robert, who heads into Spoon Curve, and Vandenberg actually goes up to 6th on his lap, so that was a good one on his part. What about the number 25, who sits down in 21st?
Watching Robert Simpkins accelerate out of that Spoon Curve and up to 130R. With these cars, the downforce levels, the grip that they have from their tires should be easy flat out. It is just an extremely fast kink to the left, but then be on top of it as you jump on these brakes. Make sure you get it slowed all the way. Don't upset the car too much over those curbs. Like I said earlier, put the power down, up a couple gears, and then start-finish actually comes up pretty quick here at Suzuka.
Simpkins looking fast, and he is fast. A 50.6 will definitely get him much faster. Oh, but he stays in 16th. That is bizarre. He was quicker by nearly a second there, about 0.8 faster, and still did not see an improvement. Nick Acosta fails his second lap as he spins out, so that means the grid is pretty much set, and it is Juho Raina on the pole with Jacob Reed starting in second. Oya Zamalo will be P3. Then you go to Kimmo Viekainen down in fourth. Felipe Castellas will be in the fifth position. Timothy Vandenberg, good enough for sixth, followed by Thomas Silbernagel in P7, and Barry West eighth. Daniel Gallus will be starting ninth, followed by Lucas Lodato, who hails from my hometown, in 10th.
Then in 11th, we have Miguel Moreland, Chris Roberts here in 12th, Art McEwen in 13th, Joe Walker just barely snuck in his qualifying effort in 14th, Keith Herner here in 15th, Nicholas Acosta in 16th, Robert Simpkins and Wolfram Fund will share row number 9, and then Ellis Spice and Arnold Cook in 20th.
Bern DuPont and Yui Zalbauer, the last two to set times in 21st and 22nd. From there, it's by iRating. Zefiris, Kochan, Stark, Schwind, Veroz, and Needham, rounding out your 28 cars here today, ready to race. We're just letting the last few cars grid up. It's pretty good conditions here in the middle of the afternoon in Japan at about 80 Fahrenheit on the track surface, although it is a little windy. Looks like about 16 miles an hour, about 25 kilometers an hour. Hopefully it doesn't gust too much, because that is a stiff wind that the drivers will have to deal with. Looks like Juho Raina and Kimmo Viekainen, the two Finns up towards the front, going to make us wait a little bit before we get going.
Well, as you know, Joe, all the cool kids, the cooler you are, the longer you wait to get into that grid spot. But as you were saying, beautiful day here at Suzuka. Maybe a little bit windy, but I'm noticing it is in December over here. 80-degree ambient temperature. Should be a great race day.
All right, Kimmo now on the grid, so they've arrived fashionably late, and the engines start to rev as the lights come up for the second round of the season for the Sunday Grand Prix Series, and the green flag is out off the line. It's a very good start from Juho, who starts to already pull away from Jacob Reed. We got a spinner towards the back. Hopefully everybody will be able to get around it. It looks like they're able to carry on.
I think that was Costas Severus with a nightmare start, but you see the top 5 really single file. Then it gets a little bit of side-by-side, I believe back there, 7th, 8th place as we go through the snake for the first time. Oh, got some problems there. I believe that's Miguel Moreland going around.
It is indeed, and off track, it looks like maybe a couple others. Joe Walker, I think, may be involved in that one. Bit of a messy start, but we do still have 27 of the 28 drivers out on track. Art McEwen is already in pit lane from whatever incident befell him earlier on. It is Juho Raina, your leader. Jacob Reed second. Kimmo Viekainen has jumped up to third since the start.
And you got to be careful. You can't let Juho Raina go out there and escape. You got to stay close to him. Let that slipstream do its work. Really let it pull you along here on some of these straightaways. But Juho Raina doing a fantastic job accelerating towards the spoon curve for the first time. And
we have to remember that Juho, I believe, was the only other driver besides Topi, Yuka, and Pauli to win a race last season. Those other 3 Finns basically dominated the whole time through. But Juho is going to try and see if he can add to his tally as he streaks ahead towards the breaking of the final chicane, and he's too far away for Jacob Reed to do anything this time. I'm watching to see if those behind will have any side-by-side battles.
And Mr. Zamayoa is also joining the back end of this train. Typically a little bit more of a competitor in the 49s, but also has been racing a lot of these Lotus 79s. But we always talk about the Finnish drivers here, Joe, and there's so many of them. Do you think that maybe they all get on like a Zoom call beforehand and kind of figure out who's got the best game plan each week?
I don't know about getting on a Zoom call, but I know that the Finnish community in sim racing is very tightly knit. They have club get-togethers all the time, and I think a yearly party that they all come and celebrate. And I mean, Finnish parties, I've seen photos. They, despite their outward personalities, they get wild.
I would love to be a part of some of those. I'm sure they would be a riot, definitely, as we're watching some of the action on track go through the Degner curves. This is Lucas Lodato back in the 9th place position. He's got the number 13 car of Thomas Silbernagel right in front of him, but also has to worry about Daniel Gallus right behind. Daniel in that number 5 car actually has quite a high I rating, got that number 5 on his car.
A little bit of a lockup there from Thomas in front of him, but that wasn't enough for Lucas to be able to catch up to him through the hairpin. He falls back slightly, and now they swing it through Spoon Curve. Thought I saw maybe another driver having an issue because I saw somebody dropping down the order, but didn't quite catch who it was. We'll try and figure that out a little bit later. But Lucas now on the back stretch and still chasing after the number 13.
And with this camera view, you kind of see the train of cars right in front, and you say, well, hey, there's nobody directly in front. Why can't you go up there and catch them? Well, these cars, they still have a lot of downforce, and the majority of the turns here at Suzuka, well, they're medium to high-speed corners where you're going to have to deal with the dirty air all day long.
Yeah, even with the ground effects being really innovated on this car, that still pulls a lot from those wings. Thomas Silbernagel making Barry West look like he is standing still. Also, can we give credit to Barry West? 6th highest I rating and racing in 8th, even with that pass. We usually see him towards the back of the top split.
That's a good point here, and he attaches himself right to the back of Thomas Silbernagel once he made that pass there in turn 1. So apparently Barry West in this red and white car now looking around the outside, but this is an area of the racetrack that you just really can't go too wide.
Through the snake, it is just unfortunately a little bit too single file as they head through the Degners now and off to the hairpin. Those are tricky right-handers, those two. Jinx to the right and down into the braking. He's going to take a big look up the inside, but he's not quite alongside his rival.
And that hairpin corner, it feeds you into that early line. So if you're Barry West, it's easy to try to poke your nose down in there, but you have to be so careful, Joe. The hairpin has caught out so many drivers for going in simply too deep.
Certainly has. So the 13 of Thomas Silbernagel, off he goes on the back stretch, trying to run away from Barry West and make this a little bit less of a battle for him, as behind them Lodato and Gallus have been close together. But we jump up to Viekainen. This is the battle for P2. Jacob Reed has not been able to hold on to the number 4. Instead, he's having to play defense.
And since he hasn't been able to hold on to our leader, I think that kind of drops him back into the clutches of this white and purple car in 3rd place of Kimmo Viekainen, because Jacob Reed, he doesn't have that slipstream pulling him along. So if he doesn't have that, that means Kimmo Viekainen will just be able to attack from behind since he can use that toe.
So at least Reed can see the leader this time. Remember, he fell off the back of Topi Kortaniemi at the ring very quickly. And this time he's keeping Juho honest here these first couple laps of the race. At the same time, having to deal with Kimmo, the Raccoon Racing driver, behind him without giving him an opportunity. So as they fly towards the Degners, watch them try and just glance these inside curbs without hitting them too hard. In fact, giving it a miss there, the number 3, making sure not to hit it. Just a little bit of a clip there on the second part of it, and then using the exit curb.
It's always kind of how much of that curb can you actually bite off, because as we watch these competitors, yeah, you can use a little bit of it, but if you start to take too much of it, that's when it really upsets the underside of the car. You lose some of that downforce, and that's when the car can really get to be a handful.
Here we go, out of Spoon once again. This is perhaps one of the longest straights here on the backstretch, especially since 130R gets to be flat out in these cars. It's all going to be about that good exit. We're on board with Kimmo, and he's pulling a little, but I don't think it's quite enough. He's many car lengths back from Jacob Reed at this stage. Behind him, Zamaloa is starting to look like a bit of an issue maybe for Kimmo.
I agree. If Kimmo doesn't go up and attack Jacob Reed right in front of him, I think that he's got his mirrors full of Oye Zamaloa, and he's actually probably going to have to go defensive here in turn number 1. Otherwise, Zamaloa is going to look to the inside. Can he go deep on the brakes? Side-by-side defensive from Viekainen on the outside. That is one thing that you can do with these corners that tighten up the radius at the end, you can really carry the momentum around the outside at the beginning.
Well, didn't quite work out for Zamaloa getting his nose in this time, but I'm sure he'll be trying again later. As I mentioned, he had a bit of a spin, unfortunately, at Charlotte Motor Speedway at the Roval, and that cost him what was a battle for the podium positions. He's once again in a similar spot here in the Lotus 79s. You can really get a sense of how swift these cars are through some of these turns from on board.
Well, and imagine driving one of these, Joe. Like, your butt is scraping on the ground with how low you sit in these things, and then plus with the elevation that you've got here at Suzuka, I should say. I'm sorry. And the figure eight, it's got to just be an experience. No wonder why Sebastian Vettel claims that this is the best racetrack in the world to drive.
And you think back to this era before they really effectively banned the ground effects in the early 80s. By the end of it, the drivers were passing out from exhaustion at the end of races. That's how much downforce they were producing. Granted, they probably didn't have an exercise regimen quite like they have today, so they weren't in the same shape, but they were still athletes back then.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just thinking, yeah, I don't see too many drivers hopping out of the car, grabbing a cigarette and the champagne bottle anymore.
Exactly. And flying out of the final turn here, Jacob Reed responding a little bit, getting away from Kimo Viekainen. That's what he needed to do to get himself some room. But we've got a bit of a replay. I've noticed a few spins in the background, but haven't really followed it. This is the number 16 of Arthur Kochan, who is going to stay out of the wall, but just barely.
As you see, that was just on the underside of the racetrack there. The rest of the leaders screaming by over the top. And that is exactly what I was noticing, Joe. Did you see all that tire smoke?
That was just the ghost of Suzuka that was flitting across the track. One of the strange factors of sim racing that sometimes you get. Gallus, in the meantime, I was talking about him being a threat to Lodato. He's still all over the back of him. This is a battle for ninth position. The DH driver trying to see if he can overtake the Cincinnati, and a bit slow off the corner. Is he going to fight it? No, he's going to let him go.
Oh, that was coordination between the two, because I tell you what, if Lucas Lodato put his nose in there, that would have ended in tears. But a very nice move from Gallus to go around the outside, take advantage of that mistake in front of him.
We'll have to put the skyline down and maybe set aside his Huda pole, see if he can catch back up to Daniel and chase him down for that ninth position. Back in 13th, Chris Roberts and Robert Simpkins as well fighting with one another, coming up to Spoon Curve. And they've also got Arnold Cook just in front of them in the 17th. Three-way fight.
You see three different lines through Spoon Curve here. Chris Roberts really trying to tighten the exit, but it's all about putting the power down coming out. We're getting all these crazy sparks from these cars riding so low to the ground. Keep it flat through 130R. Let's see if we're close enough to make a move going here into the Castillo Triangle. We're certainly close enough to take a look. Defensive from the car in front, and Chris Roberts just going to have to tuck back in line, look for another way.
Herner definitely a bit shallow there on the exit. I wonder if that'll hurt him down the main straight where you get another long run on the throttle, but doesn't seem like Chris is able to try and threaten him into turn one, although he closes up behind, but runs out of racetrack by the time they peel into the double right-hander of 1 and 2 together. That hairpin, very, very difficult on the way in.
And I think that Keith Herner was doing an excellent job of not playing defensive, but just putting his car right in the middle of the racetrack to kind of dissuade anything from looking behind.
Yep, they'll stay just about an arm's length apart. So big mistake there from Keith Herner. Just as he flashed past the screen, suddenly was off course. Wonder if that was maybe a little too hot into Dunlop.
We're going to get the GSRC replay here and watch the car. It just starts to get too big of a slide going on. He has to catch it right there, and thankfully doesn't spin it all the way around, but does go off the track. Right on through goes Chris Roberts.
I mean, that was a lucky catch on that snap. Usually if these cars start to go sideways, I mean, because of that, the way they get that downforce with the undercarriage, it's lights out. We come back to Lodato chasing on Gallus. He's really gotten back up on the horse quickly. Can Gallus hold him back? He's going to force him around the outside of 130R, and much like he saw from Lucas, he decides to back out of it.
I agree. I think that Gallus, he consciously lifted off of the throttle there, didn't want to go side by side through 130R, wants to actually live to see the end of this one.
I kind of don't blame him on that one, especially since they seem to be so close in pace. He knows that he can keep up with him. Look at the defensive move from Lucas there. He goes all the way to the pit wall to make sure that he doesn't have a chance. Almost a reverse of what you were mentioning earlier. I don't think he needed to defend that.
Well, I'm just going to echo what you just said, right? They're so similar on pace, and there goes Lucas Lodato around on the exit curb of turn number 1. We haven't seen this one really bite too many cars yet here today, but I think he just high-centered the thing on the exit.
Yeah, and Chris Roberts is going to dash by him along with Robert Simpkins. Now he's in the thick of a battle. This has become for 12th place. These cars have been fighting before he had his incident. Keith Herner's behind him, and Miguel Moreland is trying to play catch-up after he lost 4 positions from the start.
And I think the biggest thing, if you're Lucas Lodato right here, the second car in line, remember, you just had your spin. You've got some overheated tires underneath you. You know that you're faster than these cars in terms of your raw pace. Just take a breath, get through a few corners, and then pick up your race again.
Looks like he's able to do that so far as we ride on the tail of the train, Lucas Lodato. They might also be caught up. Nick Acostas, looks like Ellis Spice, Zephyrus, and Joe Walker have their own little train that's kind of starting to catch up. This will be a huge group of cars if they do.
I count 7 cars all in this train, and potentially number 8 and 9 joining in on this battle as we exit out of Spoon Curve. And look at this, Lucas Lodato already got the run on Robert Simpkins. He's pulling out to driver's left-hand side, but he's not the only one. Miguel Moreland looking for a way around as well.
We ride on board with Moreland forcing Herner to the inside, but he manages to make the corner as they now weave their way through Casio Triangle and off the final chicane. It's a poor exit there up ahead for Lodato. He loses the ground on Simpkins, but Moreland is still in the hunt on Herner.
This is that train that you were talking about, Joe. 9 cars. I actually see 10 cars if you include the one right behind Costas Zephyrus right back there. So everything only halfway through here at Suzuka, and things are condensing.
And you would have thought, with it being a single split, that they would spread apart, more drivers of differing variety. But no, this is some of the closest race we've seen, even in the mid-pack. In the meantime, Costellas here fighting 4-6. Silbernagel has gone from fighting one car to another. I think it was with Barry West earlier it was Zamaloa earlier.
And I actually think it might be Costellas that has dropped back, and that Silbernagel has gotten around him there for the 6th place position, because Barry West is now on the back of Costellas over here. And Joe, you've been doing these vintage series for a lot longer than me, but I don't recognize Philippe in this name out here.
I don't either. I'll have to check our stat sheet to see if he has indeed run one of the races before and just hasn't been around for some time. But he's showing himself well. And definitely, considering he's 12th iRating, 12th on the iRating, he's running in 7th. So really showing well for himself.
That was the thing that I was noticing, is that, yes, he's kind of punching above his weight class in terms of what his number board is and where he is running. And we don't need to go to it right now, per se, but just to let everybody know, Juho Raina still leads this race. Jacob Reed is chasing him about 2.5 seconds back, and then actually Kimmo Vilakainen has fallen back just a little bit, and it's now the number 2 car of Oye Zamayoa. He has got nobody behind him, really nobody in front of him other than Kimmo. He can set the sight on the charge for that podium position. One-on-one,
definitely a different kettle of fish for these two. Don't know that Kimmo's going to have to try and fight Oye here, and we'll see if he has the speed to run away from it. But I will note that I checked on Philippe. I do not see any entries by him in our stat sheet. So this is his first broadcast race. Let's go back to Lodato. who has managed to get himself into 12th ahead of Robert Simpkins, but is also getting ready to lap Needham just in front of him. But Needham's in an awkward spot. This is a hard place to let people by.
And it's just going to get even more awkward coming up to the Degner curves. He's got a train of cars coming through on his driver's left side. Looks like for the most part, everybody gets through. So Charlie Needham doing a great job out there. These vintage communities, I can't say enough about the respect on the racetrack to everybody.
Ooh, side by side down into the braking. That's going to be Simpkins along with Moreland trying to duke it out for 13th position. Moreland has the inside coming up through 200R. That's going to get him ahead with a shorter distance, but we could see a dive from Simpkins if he's desperate. Down at a spoon? No, he's not. He'll stay in line.
And Simpkins has been putting up a really good fight, held back Lucas Lodato for quite a few laps now with that battle with Miguel Moreland. But unfortunately, it is not over for Robert Simpkins. He now has Keith Herner directly in his mirror.
By the way, if you're not getting enough vintage action, you've got the picture-in-picture option on your TV. We've also got the IMSA Vintage series going simultaneously right now. So go check out Adam and Craig over there. Ooh, it's the battle's heating up behind them once again. Zefiris just passed Acosta for 16th.
It's funny, which one do you look at here, Joe? Because it looks like Lucas Lodato has started to run away. Miguel Moreland is trying to, but Robert Simpkins right on the back. Keith Herner after that, Kostas Zefiris, Nicholas Acosta, and then Ellis Spice is also joining the party.
Yeah, and you have to remember that Lodato is slightly out of position. He had that spin that sent him backwards, so he's playing catch-up. But, I was looking at those positions gained and lost because of that. Arnold Cook is up 10 right now. It's been an impressive day for the number 17 because I believe he did qualify. Yes, he did. So this is legitimate here.
And the other one, Kostas Zefiris, remember what happened to him on the initial standing start, Joe? I'm pretty sure he was pointed the wrong way on the start-finish line, and here he is running in 16th. Might not be that impressive, but look at how many cars are directly in front of him. Plenty of positions to go get.
Indeed, you're right. Kostas dipped his wheels into the grass trying to avoid a slow car at the start, and that spun him around. Speaking of which, Gallus just had a spin just now. So Daniel, who was battling with Lodato, now finds himself with him once again, both having issues as this battle is getting very fierce, and the 8 is putting immense pressure on. So is Lodato right now ahead of them. He's caught up to Daniel Gallus.
I see that Lodato versus Gallus, the number 5 and number 7 car, and number 7 is looking to the inside here in 130R. Kind of a repeat of what we just saw as we watch this train still, Joe, but I can say that Lucas Lodato did pass Daniel Gallus.
An attempt around the outside by Zefiris on Herner. Doesn't make it stick, but he tries to cut back, almost runs into the back of him, has to get out of the throttle. That means that Simpkins now has a great opportunity, but my goodness, they are right on top of each other. Look at them snake back and forth down the main straight. Acosta trying to see if he can catch up close enough to Simpkins. Simpkins looking to the inside of Zefiris. No change in position despite frantic moments.
It is so tough to get the job done going into turn 1 if you're not already side by side in one of these open wheel cars. Now you have to settle for the single file through the snake here. It is very, very technical through this first sector around Suzuka, so just got to keep it together, get what you can out of the lap.
Looks like they've separated briefly here, and I think we might have a chance to see Felipe Castelas, who unfortunately is out of this race. Another driver with problems here through the Dunlop curve. In fact, I think we might get a good view of the new damage model on the car.
Gonna get a shot of this GSRC replay here, and just a loose moment comes around out of the snake, and you're right, Joe, there's the new damage model, the whole front right ripping off of the car.
Oh, man, he caught the tire barrier just wrong. It started as he slid alongside. It wouldn't have been a hard hit, but that was enough to rip the wheel off, and naturally, he's not going to be able to drive it from there. By the way, Zamaloa seems to have overtaken Viakainen for that P3.
I'm going back to see exactly where this pass happened on the previous lap, and actually looks like it happened going into turn number 1 at the end of lap number 12. going on to lap number 13, I believe. But Kimmo Viilakainen now gives chase to Oye Zamioa like you see on the screen. And I don't think the fight is anywhere close to being done.
No, I think Kimmo's not going to be happy about the fact that he lost this one. He is a fierce fighter. So Viilakainen sticks with the gearbox of the number 2 down through the Degners. And as they head towards the hairpin, this is one of those places where you can sometimes see a pass, but I doubt it this time. Although, look at how deep he takes it into it, almost spins the car, he catches it and loses time.
He loses a lot of that track position, and if you saw that little bit of a lockup after the apex, well, that's because Kimmo Viilakainen had so much yaw angle in the car. It was sliding so much, he needed to lock it down before he spun around.
Oh, we've had another wreck here. That's Keith Herner and I believe Ellis Spice, unfortunately, down through the snake. This is not a common place that you will see wrecks. So he's offline. He's in the gravel. Did they get collected with one another on that one? He slides into the side of Spice, and the two of them slam into the wall.
I believe it was side by side with Acosta. And then just, as we've seen quite a few times, Joe, just getting greedy with that throttle pedal on exit can spin these cars right around.
Oh, Spice sounds pretty upset over the text chat, and I can understand, but also that it was just an honest mistake, and that can happen, and especially in cars that are as difficult to drive as these.
And I think if Ellis Spice goes back and looks at the replay, he'll understand that it was a racing incident as we watch this battle for the final spot on the podium. Got 6 laps remaining, and something that I've noticed here, Joe, it seems like Kimmo Viilakainen very, very aggressive on this first part of the lap, and then Oye Zamioa a little bit faster on the back half of the lap.
I tell you what, I'm impressed with Oye because he joined into our broadcast maybe, about 2 or 3 seasons ago, as they're going to go by a stopped car there at the side of the track. That was Bern DuPont, who thankfully was out of the way, but that will distract them enough that now Kimmo Viilakainen's going to try and go on the move, and as he accelerates out of the hairpin, that's not quite enough, but he's on the attack now.
Yeah, and I think he'll be close enough if he plays his cards right to make a look down into Spoon Curve, but the shortest distance around. And the other thing that I'm noticing, side by side, Viilakainen around the outside at Spoon Curve gets the job done. Extremely aggressive.
I said he was a fierce fighter, and that is a good example right there. We'll see if it'll come back to another fight with these 6 laps to go. Worth noting that I'm watching the chat between Herner and Spice here, and Keith mentioned that he had some damage that maybe we weren't aware of, and that may have hurt the car's handling. So there may have been an incident before his initial spin.
Lots of emotions can go on in sim racing, and I think that's why we all love to do it here, is that a lot of people see, well, it's some cars going around on the screen, but trust me, that emotional take is extremely similar. You are invested into one of these races, and when you do feel like you're wrongfully accused out there, wrongfully taken out, trust me, it can boil over.
The human drive for competition is amazing, and it definitely comes out here in sim racing as Roberts and Lodato. Now we have 2 different drivers now fighting for position. It's no longer with Gallus. Chris Roberts up 3 positions. Lodato back to where he began this race, and he is climbing all over the back of that number 9.
I'm not sure if he's going to be quite close enough to make a move going down into turn number 1, although the slipstream effect in full force right now. He pokes his nose down into turn 1, realizes he wasn't quite close enough, feed through turn number 2, and now this technical snake section. I keep saying single file, but it is one of the most fun sections to drive. It just feeds into each corner.
Well, hopefully fun for you, but I know I've always struggled through this part of the track, and it's going to exit now into Dunlop. Long left-hander. We've already seen a couple drivers make critical mistakes in this corner. These 2 are going to keep it on the track and then fly into the Degners, with Roberts still having the track advantage.
The Degner turns and the hairpin is where I had the most trouble here at Suzuka. It's so easy to overcook it and go flying off of the track, whether it's on the brakes or just trying to hold that apex speed. But both of these competitors keeping it nice and tidy, coming up out of the hairpin, accelerate towards the Spoon Curve.
Not too shocked that attrition is starting to eat him up a bit. McEwen, Castellas, Veras, and it looks like Spice and Herner have joined those who have DNF'd, and Zephyrus has been taking some repairs. Is a little bit wide there for Chris Roberts, opens the door, and Lodato steps through immediately.
We haven't seen too many mistakes at Spoon Curve, but that is how easily it can catch you out. Lucas Lodato right around Chris Roberts, but look at Roberts start to fight back. He got choked up a little bit going into 130R, lifted off the gas. Going to have to make up all that ground again.
Lucas will probably appreciate having a little breathing space here. He's been in so many tight fights all race long, and we are down to 4 laps to go currently. So it's coming to an end, and I'm sure the sooner the better for him. He's had, I wouldn't say a good day, but an exciting day.
Exciting. Yes, that is definitely, I would say, the best way to phrase it. I think that quite a few drivers have had exciting days on the racetrack, and back up at the front, things have calmed down, Joe. Remember, Viakainen and Zamayoa, they were fighting each other, but once Kimo made that extremely aggressive move around the outside in Spoon Curve, well, he has said peace out, thrown up the deuces to that number 2 car and left him in the dust.
Done a great job with it, especially considering how close they did seem to be matched to one another earlier in the race. But maybe we're seeing a little bit of pace difference now that we're towards the end, and these cars can change over the course of the race due to the lightening of the fuel. Lodato still with Roberts behind him as, Nick Acosta off track once again, coming out of the snake and into Dunlop. That's been a theme today.
See exactly how it happens here. Does he get involved? This was before the exit curb, and you're just always on the limit of cars. When I was racing even Miatas, Joe, how it was taught to me is you have to drive at the limit of adhesion. This is Chris Roberts going around as well. Look like coming out.
This is live.
Curve. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, this is live, and in sympathy, Daniel Gallus spun behind him. I think he was trying to avoid the spinning cars, stomped on the brakes, and both of them went around. So that means that now Lodato is well ahead of any rivals as we come over to Arnold Cook, who is just ahead of him, but more focused on Silbernagel in the fight for 7th.
Goodness, and we'll have to try to see as we watch this battle down the front straightaway. Arnold Cook trying to get around the number 13 here of Silbernagel, but I was going to say, Joe, I believe it was Lucas Lodato that got through like those 2 or 3 cars spinning on the exit of the Spoon Curve, and holy smokes, he barely snuck through.
Did a great job on it as this rages on now with 3 to go for P7. Silbernagel, another one that we've seen kind of in the thick of the action every time we turn the camera over to this blue car. But the gold number 17 definitely punching above his weight, having qualified down in 20th, up to 8th place, a gain of 12 positions here in that Warsteiner machine.
He's looking for another one, try to crack into that top 7, just keep the pressure on to Thomas Silbernagel, go through the hairpin a little bit wide from this number 17 car, but is able to put the power down nicely. And I love some of these vintage liveries that come out here, and that gold, that bronze looks really nice in the sun.
And I bet he really appreciates ever since they added the spec maps here on iRacing, because it certainly looks a lot closer to the real thing. But he's going to have to get closer to Silbernagel if he wants to try and make a pass. So far ahead is the leaders. It's already 2 laps to go here, and we're watching 7th place, barely getting out of Spoon. Reina has not really scampered away from Jacob Reed. It stayed at about 3 seconds between them, but he hasn't really looked under threat.
Well, one thing that I would love to see is look at those last the last lap from Juho Reina. A 147.69. Jacob Reed in second place, a 147.69. So they're doing identical pace, Joe. That's why he hasn't been able to run away.
Jacob's going to get a little frustrated, imagine. 2 second places in a row to 2 different drivers. Eventually, he's going to be able to get himself up to the top spot. If he keeps this up, the opportunities have got to get there eventually. But down into the snake once again as we battle for P7. Silbernagel looking just a little bit farther away than he was last lap.
The other 2 names that we haven't said at all, or at least I haven't said them yet, the battle for 16th place right now, Paul Schwind and Sebastian Stark kind of battling it out, going down the front straightaway here. A little bit further back in the field, though.
Yeah, and they are fighting for that P16 as we continue to follow the fight for 7th. Also, white flag already coming out for Juho Raina this lap by. Let's see if he's any quicker than Reed. It's a 47.4, continuing to go faster and faster. 47.5. He's picked it up slightly in comparison to the number 1.
And they're just kind of duking it out right now. But I think if you're Juho Raina, you see that car behind you of Jacob Reed at an identical pace, and it's almost a little bit of a car in your mirror that if you make any sort of mistake, he's going to be right on you here, even on the last lap.
And, well, we saw Topi Kortaniemi make that mistake last time on the last lap, except he had a 10-second gap. Jacob Reed will breeze past, certainly, if Juho has a spin off the course, but Jacob is pushing. I just saw him have a huge slide off screen. We're watching Zamaloa and Viekainen also separated by less than a second.
I mentioned that Kimmo had run away from this all-white number 2 car, but it looks like Zamaloa has crawled it back in. Only about a half a lap remains, though. It's going to have to make up a little bit more room really fast.
Spanish driver trying to see if he can get close enough to the fin to have a go here on the last lap, but still struggling to get the throttle down as quick as he can and keep up with them. Looks like he spun the tires slightly out of the hairpin. And for Juho Raina, it is all of about 3 or 4 corners to go in the number 4 machine, back up to about 3.5 seconds ahead of Jacob Reed.
Just got to go through 130R, set it on cruise control for this number 4 car. Although it is not Pauli, it is not Yuka, it is not Topi, it is Juho today. Finish dominance once again.
And the streak of Finnish winners continues here in Japan as Juho Raina takes the win on Saturday for the Sunday Grand Prix Series. Jacob Reed will get second, and Viekainen does claim third.
The Zamayoa back there, plenty happy with the 4th place position. Think he is super pumped to be hopping into these Lotus 79 cars as we watch Timothy Vanderberg back here trying to sneak away a couple more positions. Going to come home in the 5th spot in that number 20 car. A great race for him.
Pretty decent amount of cars. They're going to finish on the lead lap here as we've got, it looks like about 18 of them that are wrapping this one up. And then Barry West with a great run to 6th place. Again, very impressive for him. He's going to be really chuffed that he was able to get a top 10, almost a top 5 today.
Good result for that red, white, and blue number 6 car as we watch the rest of these cars stream down the start-finish line. Arnold Cook going to finish in the 8th place. Directly behind him, Lucas Lodato with that exciting day.
Exactly. As the rest of the 18 on the lead lap wrap it up. Not really many battles from here. It looks like Stark and Acosta apart by about a second from one another, but it'll take something drastic for that to change hands. And a little slip up there you can see from Acosta off the corner puts paid to it anyways. That's going to wrap us up. If you don't hop over to the IMSA Vintage Series, don't forget we've got more to come here with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews just after the break. Welcome back to Suzuka. Round 2 of the Sunday Grand Prix Series sees Juho Rinne take his second ever win in the series. And Jacob Reed followed him home in P2 with Viekainen fighting hard to take this podium. Zamaloa started on the podium but finished just outside of it in fourth. He and Kimo back and forth all race long. Vandenberg managed to get himself a fifth place. Remember, with the number 20 on his car. Definitely one that I think should try and show up again and get some more results like this. Barry West also, we typically see him finishing much farther down the order, and he gets a sixth place today, perhaps one of his best that we've seen from him. Silbernagel 7th, and Cook going from 20th to 8th was followed by Lodato in 9th and Moreland in 10th.
Then we have Chris Roberts here in 11th. Daniel Gallus, despite a couple of issues on the racetrack, comes home in 12th place position. Joe Walker in 13th. Robert Simpkins here in 14th. And then Sebastian Stark with a very good day on the racetrack. Our second biggest mover, up 10 positions to finish in 15th. Great job, Sebastian. Nicholas Acosta in 16th. Paul Schwind in 17th. Uwe Zielbauer in 18th position, the last car on the lead lap. Then we have Artur Koken in 19th and Bernd DuPont in 20th.
Needham finished 21st, 3 laps down. We're getting into the drivers that had some big issues out there. Fund in 22nd. Keith Herner eventually got back out on track, finished 23rd. Zefiris, we found out, had contact with him and wound up 24th. Ellis Spice, a DNF, so is Veras, Castellas, and McEwen here today. We do have third place finisher Kimo Viekainen ready to chat with us. Kimo, congratulations on a podium. You and Oye had quite the fight out there.
Yeah, we had quite a lot of fun today, and it's a shame that we had that one lapped car, which kind of ruined our battle, but that's racing here.
Sometimes you'll get that happening, especially at a track where it's going to be difficult to get out of the way with it being so technical. We've been seeing more and more of Zamaloa here on the broadcast races, and obviously more of him here in the Lotus 79s. Were you all that familiar with him before he started racing here in the broadcast races?
No, I saw him first time last week at Nordschleife, but fair fight with him. So I'll just need to thank him to gave me a shot for that third place today.
Yeah, and certainly looks like he's establishing a good reputation among such a tight-knit group. How do you feel about how the car is racing with the updates it's had, especially the new damage model? Thankfully, we haven't seen you test it in this race, but do you like how it is working out?
Yeah, it's nice to see some sparks there, and also the car is bottoming out a little bit more after the new damage model. You can clearly heard it when you're racing, but it's not that bad, and it's quite a nice feature, I think.
It certainly, it sends a lot of sparks. In fact, we're seeing on the replay now just how many are coming off of Zamaloa in front of you. Again, congratulations on a top 3 and a well-run race.
Yeah, thanks guys, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well. Kimo Viekainen, our third place finisher. Unfortunately, looks like despite all the excitement we had on track, not anybody else is interested in coming and chat with us. Maybe they're off to watch the IMSA Vintage Series, but a big thank you to the Lotus 79 community for bringing us back for another season of coverage and for working with us to have a Saturday broadcast so that people could have a more calm Christmas Eve tomorrow. Also, thanks to the team today, Joey, Rob, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media, our website, and our merchandise store, but don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment. The next race for this series stays in Japan. We're off to Fuji. That'll be Sunday, December 31st, so we're going to be on New Year's Eve for that one at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. But be sure to check out our other broadcasts listed here, including, as we said, the IMSA Vintage Series going on live right now. But until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.